Well, look, it's great to be able to speak to you all today. It's a stunning day outside. It's very hard to be inside a theatre, but look, with all the sunshine coming out of everyone here, it's great to be able to, and the energy in here is probably as nice inside as it is outside. I'm actually from this city, so I was born and raised in Wellington, and came from Island Bay, went to Island Bay Primary School, South Wellington Intermediate School, Wellington High School, and then Victoria University. So I'm a product of the state school system of New Zealand. And actually it was a pretty good system, actually. And what I like about the Festival for the Future, and why I'm so delighted to be talking to you today, is that I love the theme of Live the Dream. Because I was born here by 2 days, actually, in New Zealand. My parents were originally from England. And I used to say to Dad, you know, why did you come to New Zealand? And he said, for a better life. And I think he was absolutely right. And it was all about living the dream. So my parents had a dream of coming here, and I think that we as a family have lived that dream. But I've also, as I've grown up in New Zealand, and then I've spent half my life away from New Zealand, I really do firmly believe that we do create our own reality. So the reason why I selected this slide when I was thinking about speaking today is that often, you know, all of you, and if I just look at the demographics across this room, we're all of different age groups, and we all get to pinnacles, and we all look out and survey the next big thing that we're going to do. And I have a saying that you dream it, and you say it, and then you do it. And so that's what I've done my whole life, is I'm always dreaming, and even now, you know, I'm just, I'm in my, without betraying my age too much, I'm in my early 50s now, so it feels like, you know, but I can still vividly remember being 18, and my daughter's actually 22, 23, and, you know, there's this whole thing about being really clear about the dream and living our reality. And this is where I started my life, actually, was in the bush. So I went to university and I studied a Bachelor of Science in Zoology, and majoring in animal ecology. And I studied these little rare New Zealand native frogs called Liapalmarachii. They're one of the rarest frogs in the world that only occur in the Coromandel. They haven't changed in about 50 million years. They're a living fossil, and they go back to the dinosaur era. How many, show of hands of who's heard of Liapalmarachii? Ha! Wellington's actually probably better than most other venues that I ever asked that question. So these frogs are great because the man looks after the babies, which is really good. And so that's a guy, and he's got all the little frogs, and those are little yolky eggs, and they don't hatch out into tadpoles, they hatch out into baby froglets, and the froglets then sit on the dad's back, and dad raises the frogs. The trouble is they haven't really changed at all since the dinosaur era. So often when I speak to these types of venues and people say, well, why did you do zoology, and why did you then go into business? My story is this. First of all, I decided there was no money in frogs. So once I actually graduated and studying these amazing creatures and living in this incredible environment, in fact, I met my husband in the bush. So he wasn't physically in the bush, he was at university, but we just happened to be studying the frogs together, and the rest is history. We probably, you know, had the same type of experience as the two young people did on the chairs just now. You get to know each other. Anyway, I'm still married to him. And we're still happily married. So something was to be said for meeting in the bush. And I actually get a lot of my, even today, people ask, why do I live in Otago, central Otago? It's because I'm still, even though I'm a businesswoman, I'm a nature girl at heart. And so I've never lost my passion for zoology. But anyway, coming back to why did I get out of zoology and into technology was, I got part the way through a master's degree and I decided there was absolutely no money in studying these frogs. No one was going to pay me to do this. And I was living on about $50 a week. And many of you can relate to this, after you've lived on student bursaries for so long, you really get sick of it, and you think, no, I have to think about what else I want to do. So luckily IBM were advertising for graduates. They didn't care what degree you had, as long as you had a degree. And so out of a few hundred interviews, they interviewed a few hundred of us students who'd graduated, and I was one of the 35 lucky ones to be hired, and they spent a year actually retraining us into how to write software programs and how to speak and how to listen and how to read a P&L. And then they turn you out loose on customers. So that was great, and that was actually in Wellington up on the terrace. So I was with IBM, Wellington and Auckland, and then I decided that, maybe there's some other things that I needed to do, which brings me really to the next part of my story, was that, what I found is my life has been a series of opening zips. And you may find this as well, is that you start off on a passion which started out with frogs, and then I actually had another passion which was actually I really enjoyed people, so I joined IBM. And when the time is right, you have these opening opportunities of times to change. So I basically was with IBM in New Zealand and Australia, and then I had this dream of always wanting to go and live in Africa since I was about 4. Don't ask me why, I just did. So in the 1987 stock market crash, we decided, oh, well, it's going to be really horrible in New Zealand. We were entering a depressionary sort of feeling place at that time. So we basically bought a car and we drove through game reserves, and I did all my Africa thing. That was a really great thing. And then I went to Cape Town on a beautiful day, and I walked into IBM's offices and I said, hi, I'm a New Zealander, I'm ex-IBM New Zealand. And they said, oh, good, well, we'll hire you. And so we lived in Cape Town, and we ended up staying there for 9 years. So that was just, you have these passions, and then you go on a journey, and then you'll find another international trip. And then when I was in Cape Town, I was with IBM for a few years there, and then there was this company called SAP. And of course, and SAP in South Africa means the South African Police, but it wasn't that. It was a different company. They were a software company, and they had about 1,000 employees in those days. And Hasso Plattner, who was the founder, he and I had a conversation on a golf course, and I think I asked 2 questions, and he spoke nonstop for 2 hours. But I went home to my husband and I said, I think this company's really going to do some interesting things, and I'm going to join this company. And the rest is history. Basically, I had the opportunity to live and set up subsidiaries in sub-Saharan Africa, train people out of, who previously had only experiences of being guerrillas, carrying AK-47s in bush wars in Namibia, which was former Southwest Africa, training them in SAP. It was amazing to be able to work with the African people and bringing technology into sub-Saharan Africa. So that was an incredible experience. And then I got a call one day to say, we're here, you're a Kiwi, and we're setting up SAP in New Zealand. Would you like to come back and run SAP New Zealand? So my life has been these series of openings that have come through. But there's 2 things that I've always used in that. The first thing I always talk about is disobedient thinking, and I think this is something that we all do have in New Zealand. In most of my experience of companies that I've worked for in different parts of the world, since even Africa, and I've gone on to many other parts of the world, is that often when people ask you to do something, in the States in particular, when you say, you ask employees to say, jump as a boss, and they'll say, yes, sir, how high, or yes, ma'am, how high. What we have is we have something in it where we actually always say why. We just do. We always question why, and never stop questioning why. And in fact, it's been my disobedient thinking in retrospect that I think has actually done me really well in the work that I've done internationally, as well as actually even coming back in what I'm doing now. And also this creativity that creates, because if you keep questioning why, don't just accept status quo, you can always keep changing the paradigms. And that's what I've done all the time in business, in my career, in turning around businesses, starting up businesses and transforming them. It's always looking at the paradigm of ask the question why. Maybe it's the scientific training coming through, maybe it's the New Zealand education system coming through, but I do think this is in our DNA as a nation. And keep using that, because that's where the creativity comes from to start to do new things. Question the paradigms. What goes on in the world doesn't have to be that way. We have the ability to make a difference. We have the ability to change things. The other thing that I've also found in my lifetime, and these are just a few lessons I wanted to share with you, is that you might feel like a cat when you go in a room, little kitty cat. But my mother always taught me one thing. When you walk into a place, look like you own the place when you walk into it. And that was always a really useful thing, even though you're feeling like terrified inside, like, oh my God, why am I here? Am I really good enough to do this? I feel like the lion. I remember when I was asked to move from SAP New Zealand as the managing director, I'd grown the business to 40 million. SAP had asked me then to go to North America and become the head of the consumer packaged goods group, which wasn't doing very well. They wanted me to go up and figure out how to fix this. I remember sitting on the Boeing 747 going into Los Angeles. I'm feeling really quite scared right now because this is a $40 million business and I'm going up to run a $450 million business. And the thing that I learned out of that was that you couldn't micromanage a $450 million business. When you're running a $40 million business, you have your hands on most things. What's interesting about that in New Zealand is having your hands on most things is a really, really good thing to learn, because when you go to America, because the scale is so much bigger, they're very siloed in their skill sets, and so they tend to be quite deep on one thing. Kiwis, when we go to America, we actually have a pretty good general management type of capability, where we go to the States and we have an ability to land there and start to see, you know, a much broader picture. And when I went there and took over the consumer packaged goods group, and they're all like miserable because they hadn't made their numbers in 6 quarters in a row and everyone thought they were losers. So I brought all the management into a room like this and I kind of like talked to them. And there were 2 things that came out of it. Number one, their former boss was a US Marine, so he used to say, look left, they look left. He used to say, look right, they'd look right. And I said, well, stop doing that. Like, question things, like, what's actually going on in this market? Oh, well, we've run out of market. I said, are you kidding? You haven't run out of market. You want no market? Come to New Zealand. I'll show you no market. I said, this is America. I'm like a kid in a candy store. I see opportunity everywhere. So it's just about thinking about things differently. It's that disobedient thinking, being creative, and, you know, for God's sake, don't act like a US Marine. It's not very good when when you're in the corporation. So this command and control style, military type way of running companies, that's not the way technology companies thrive. So I actually, when I sort of put this slide together, walk in as if you own the place, and listen to those little fears inside, and then figure out how you can scale yourself, because you can scale. And I went on from running a few $100 million businesses to running multi-billion-dollar businesses, and it's just really taking those same principles and then scaling yourself and scaling the way you think about surrounding yourself with great people. And surround yourself with people who are as strong and who are better than you, because you can then get a nice complementary team to complement your own skill sets. The other thing that I also learned when I was up in North America was that the then worldwide boss said to me, well, Geraldine, you've done so well turning around some of these business groups. We want you to now help us transform the whole of the North American field organization, in addition, by the way, to you making those quarters. So that was quite a large task. And then he said, so what do you want in return for that? So I thought, what do I want in return for that? So he offered me the head of head of US North America sales, or I could come back and run Australia and New Zealand. So when I went back home to my wonderful husband who I met in the bush and said, what would you rather do? Stay in America or come home to New Zealand and Australia and help them fix that? He said, definitely come south. So the key lesson that I've learnt, though, in all of that is that often people are scared to ask. And I even say this to my daughter sometimes. If you don't ask, you don't get. And that's true of anything, whether it's a promotion, whether it's getting a pay raise, whether it's even, getting anything in life. Sometimes it's really scary to ask the question. But what I've found is that 9 times out of 10, if you're cheeky enough to ask, people actually say yes. You'll be surprised. You go, wow, they actually said yes. Like, yeah, So it's like, don't sit there taking CRAP. You don't have to. You really don't have to. If you can change your paradigms, and if you don't ask, you don't get. Value yourself, but make sure when you are asking that you actually, probably have earned the right to it. Because if you're just going to go in there and, you're in la-la land and you ask, you might not get the good answer, the answer that you're hoping for. But if you feel that you've earned the right to ask the question, ask, and you'll be surprised about how many times doors open for you. And so that's something else. And I also often find in women reporting to me in particular, over the years, they're often too afraid to ask. Guys seem to be more, happier to ask the question than the women do. But it's never be afraid to ask. And as I said, 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes. Which really sort of brings me to what I'm doing now. So I sort of just finished my stint of being president for SAP in North America. I've only been back in New Zealand since February, but I spotted this huge gap in the world, in the market. Every company I've spoken to across major businesses are all telling me they're at an inflection point. They can't keep doing in the next 4 years what they're doing in the last 4 years. And if you look at the average life of a Fortune 500 company, half a century ago, these Fortune 500 companies would last 75 years. Today, the average Fortune 500 company lasts 14 years, and it's actually declining. And if they don't change, in the next decade, 40% of Fortune 500 companies will disappear. 40% of the companies we see today will disappear. And here are the dynamics. The consumerization of devices. I see many of you have your device. I've got all my devices. There is more power in the hands of the customer now than at any time in the history of the planet. We know more about what we want than the corporations that serve us. The millennials, which are these wonderful people, most of whom are you, all right, born post-1986, you are social digital natives. You are more different to any other generation that has ever lived in the history of this planet. And you know what you want. You take selfies about yourself. And this is all about the me generation. But you're also socially incredibly aware. You're about 50% of the workforce. You're born ready to compete in this world. You are not going to sit around waiting decades to become the president of a company. In fact, many of you are actually setting up your own businesses, and good on you for that. In fact, my advice to you is these old world companies out there, they are going to lock you in cubes, and they keep you low down for years, and quite frankly, those 40% of those companies will not be here 1 decade from now. You guys are the generation that are changing the planet, and God bloody bless you for it. Because there's a whole bunch of things we have to change. And so part of the company that I'm creating is actually very focused on creating technology that actually solves some of these problems. So these two things are causing massive change in the world, and it needs to happen. The next one is the economy is not that great. 2009, the world changed. The Mayan calendar said the world was going to change, and it did. It didn't actually blow up, but the paradigm in the world has changed. And that companies that are sitting in low single-digit growth, and I tell this to CEOs and boards, it's not because the economy's bad. Look at the companies that are really relevant. Look at Nike, look at Apple, look at Google, look at other companies. They're doing really well. It's just that you're not doing that very well because you haven't mastered those two little trend changes on the left-hand side. You need to become relevant again. You are in your old smokestack world, and that smokestack world is, in fact, a fading world. So you have to change. And again, think about my zoology major, adapt or die, evolve or be left behind. I'm sitting on boards right now helping companies either adapt or they are going to die. Experiences. I'm educating most executives and CEOs. The world has moved to a post-industrial world where people are prepared to pay a premium for great experiences. It's no longer about the shoe, it's the experience you have with the shoe. People want experiences. You don't just want stuff. And in fact, we're also focused on just delivering things at a price. Give me the experiences. So I'm running workshops now inside corporations, re-educating these old guys to rethink, all right, the fact that you can actually create great experiences. And in fact, I've teamed up with a guy who wrote a wonderful book on this, Joe Pine, who's on my board, who authored The Experience Economy, and we run workshops on that. In fact, I'm going to be bringing him to New Zealand probably sometime in 2014, and we're going to run a series of seminars like this because we are busy. We're on a mission to re-educate business on how do you actually create these amazing experiences for people that we actually would pay a premium for. We don't just want all this rubbish that gets dished up every day. And then, of course, there's all the regulatory stuff. Not much we can do about it, but that's also disrupting businesses as well. So the big problem we have in the world today is we're living under a 130-year-old system since the Industrial Revolution where we as the consumer or the customer are stuck at the end of a value chain, and we're now liberated. We have mobile devices, we have social media, we know what we want, and yet the old corporations are still dealing with us in this old factory-driven model where everything is one way directed at us. They're sticking new technologies on these old processes, and so we get spied on, we get cookied, we get inferred, we get spied on through our Facebook, we get bombarded to death with advertising, which is really junk mail. That used to be on my post box, and I used to say no junk mail. I can't get rid of it now because it comes at me every time I go on the internet. The world has been hijacked by junk mail. And that junk mail comes in the form of so-called advertising, but it's not even advertising anymore, it's just spam. So this is a problem. So effectively, what my company is doing is we're helping corporations move from being transactional with customers to building one where we put the customer at the center and we build consumer intimacy. And so what we're doing with MyWave, which is a company that I'm founding in New Zealand and we're going out to the world, is on the left-hand side, I'm re-educating enterprises that it's about relationships with people. Your customers are not herds of animals to be studied like zoology did. And that's what marketing does. Marketing looks at you as gal, aged 18 to 25, earns so much. And then they assume that that's what you want. They get it wrong every time. My husband is so sick of advertising for dog food on the front of his, of his news media, he doesn't even own a dog. I turned 52 the other day on Facebook. I got advertisements for Botox, liposuction, and what was the other thing? And I needed a new man. I'm going to say, they know nothing about me. I still love my man after 30-something years. So it's about personalization. It's about giving you what you want when you want it, in your device, any way that you want it. So that's what we're educating business on. So we're creating technology that enables that. On your side, that's exactly what you want. My services, what I want, when I want, based on my preferences. So shut out a lot of the noise of the internet that comes to you and give you a world that when you sign into this world, it brings you the feeds that you want. It brings you the movies that you want. It will bring you the merchandise that you want. And you don't have to go out into the internet across everyone's walled silos and get what you want. What you want is brought to you, and you're in control. And when you do this through a technology based on personal clouds, you all have your own personal cloud. Your personal cloud is it's almost like your car on the internet, and you drive that car, but you pull things to you based on what you want when you want it. And so what we're doing is we're starting MyWave, first of all, on the enterprise side, because they pay for stuff, because I've got to find a way to make some money, all right, with the technology, but we're also designing the consumer side of it, which is actually giving you can pull to you what you want when you want it. So we're just bringing up our website, and we're in capital raising. We've got our first pilots with the enterprises starting in Australia and New Zealand. We're sand pitting it here. The technology is available. And then we're launching out back into the North America. And the reason why we're starting in Australia and New Zealand is that we are actually finding there are some really clever CEOs and chairmen who actually do want to change the paradigm, but we have to go and educate them. And as we hire more people into MyWave, we're going to be looking for really smart programmers, designers, and I really want to get people out in that millennial world. So if there's any great technical people who are interested in personal clouds and mobile device applications and creating amazing experiences, email me. Okay, 1 minute. So this is the world we're creating. We're putting you guys at the center, me at the center, you at the center. And it looks like this: MyWave, my life. So you have your own personal cloud. You can build your relationships with your bank, and your bank can help you manage your money. You can actually buy a thing like a car. Even your car can have a personal cloud. Your pets can have a personal cloud. I won't go through all of the use cases, but basically what you're able to do is pull anything to you. I'll give you maybe one example. If you had television content, for example, you can let the TV company know what genres you're interested in, and you can actually pull the movies and pull the genres to you that you need and want. When you want to go out and buy from certain brands, you can actually pull the brands that you need and want and share your preferences with them through opt-in, but you own your data, so you're not being advertised to, and they can service you better. So that just gives a very, very high level what it is. Last 2 lessons. What I've learned so far: life is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. So if you're sprinting, don't. In fact, the way to build a company, because I'm building MyWave now, it's a bit like climbing a mountain. It's step by step, and I can't leap to the top much as I can see the top. It's every day you just take another step in the right direction. So life is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. Some people I've met in my life that sprint and they actually are not alive anymore, or they're very, very sick. So trust me, you've got to view life as a marathon. And last one, be bold. Create an audacious vision. Take those steps to make it real. And it really is about dream it in your head. Talk about it, and you'll be amazed at what you can do. So thank you very much.